What's up everyone and welcome back to the MMA Zone. Today, let's get started with Charles Oliveira calls out Max Holloway for BMF match. The resume of Charles Oliveira is already littered with multiple UFC records, and he's also former lightweight champion. But DuBronx says he wants to add the BMF title to his legacy. And before we continue, make sure to leave a like on the video to help support the channel. Oliveira continues to make the case for inclusion in the UFC's Hall of Fame, as we're talking about a guy who holds the record for most UFC finishes, submission, and bonuses. The dangerous fighter remains in the championship mix as well, as heading into his UFC 309 fight with Michael Chandler next Saturday, DuBronx is ranked number 2. But while talking with MMA Fighting, the Brazilian star was asked about the fact that Max Holloway has moved up to 155 pounds. And due to the lengthy victim list Oliveira carries, he was also asked about the possibility of fighting Blessed for the BMF belt. Speaking in Portuguese, the 35-year-old said this: "I'm about legacy. That'd be great. Why not? As I'm talking about legacy, I mean being the BMF champ would be gigantic for that." Of course, on paper, Holloway versus Oliveira for the BMF title makes a ton of sense. They're two of the toughest and most respected fighters in the game. But could it happen? If Oliveira defeats Michael Chandler for a second time at UFC 309, it could be a possibility for sure. Or if Chandler scores an electrifying win on Saturday, a lot of folks would probably be down for Holloway and Chandler to scrap for the BMF belt as well. In fact, Chandler has called for that fight before. But what do you think? Do you want to see a Blessed DuBronx BMF title fight? Shavkat exposes both Colby Covington and Kamaru Usman for pretending to take a fight with him on social media instead of actually accepting the fight. Shavkat took to Twitter this morning writing, "All I hear are empty callouts. No real intention, no action, just posturing for the media and fans. Kamaru Usman and Colby Covington." Up next, Tom Aspinall frustrated with Michael Chandler. Recently, Tom Aspinall was asked to weigh in on the upcoming rematch between Charles Oliveira and Michael Chandler, and while doing so, the English star had an interesting take about Iron Mike. Chandler is booked to battle DuBronx for a second time at UFC 309, as back in 2021, Oliveira came back to finish him in round 2. This fight will be Chandler's 6th under the UFC banner, and while the former Bellator champion has a losing record in the octagon, he's been buzzing UFC fans with his aggressive and entertaining style. Case in point, while talking about the upcoming matchup with UFC on TNT Sports, Aspinall said this about Chandler: "I think Michael Chandler especially, he must be one of the most frustrating fighters to coach ever. His tactics are completely out the window when he fights. He just goes for it. It's basically like he's in a street fight with gloves on. It's fantastic to watch. He just fights with pure aggression, and he was very close to finishing this. My God, he fights with pure aggression and athleticism. Obviously, he's very technical, but he chooses not to use that in a way." It'll be interesting to hear if Chandler's coaches have a different take here, but there's certainly a good chance they don't. For example, Chandler is a decorated former NCAA Division I wrestler, but he rarely turns to that skill set in fights, pretty similar to Justin Gaethje, another walking highlight reel. All that aside, if Chandler does lose at UFC 309 and does so badly, some might question whether he should have fought more strategically in his UFC run. Another loss would drop him out of title contention, and you'd also have to wonder if the UFC might look for another opponent for Conor McGregor. Now let's discuss Jon Jones' response to haters on Instagram Live. Jon Jones continues to take fire from some MMA fans and pundits following his recent comments about Tom Aspinall, which only amplified claims he's ducking the interim heavyweight champ. Not surprisingly, Bones isn't walking back any of what he said. For months, Jones has said that he's not really interested in fighting Aspinall, and more recently, the champ scrutinized the resume of the rising star. In addition, Jones said he would be interested in fighting Alex Pereira and not Aspinall, if he does decide to keep fighting post UFC 309. As noted, those comments only spiked outcry that he's ducking Aspinall. During a recent Instagram Live session, some folks called Jones a duck, and the polarizing star fired back with this:
"I see quite a few people in here calling me a duck. I'm a duck. Call me a duck. Call me a chicken. Call me a goat. Call me a dog. I'm not in high school anymore, guys. A grown man out here chasing his dreams. It's funny that we really live in a world where being called a duck should affect me. Guys, come on."
The question is, however, does Jones really want to hang up the gloves with the ducking claim hanging over his legacy if he beats Miocic at UFC 309? Speaking of Aspinall, while he does continue to call for a fight with Jones, the Brit has never really argued that Bones is not an amazing fighter. Case in point, during the TNT show, Aspinall had this to say about Jones' abilities in the octagon. "First of all, when we talk about Jon Jones, his knowledge in MMA is among the best to ever do it. You know what I mean? I've got to give him that. He's very long, 6'4". At the end of the day though, it doesn't sound like Aspinall expects to fight either Miocic or Jones following UFC 309. The powerful heavyweight also said this: "It's a bit of a retirement party, but I'm looking forward to being up close and personal and seeing what these guys look like on the back end of their career." So we'll see what happens next weekend. If Jones narrowly gets by Miocic, or obviously if he loses, it seems pretty clear he'll hang up the gloves. But what do you think? If Miocic tests Jones or hurts him in their bout, will that ensure Bones walks away from the game? Jon Jones goes off on Twitter late last night, responding to Magomed and fans, saying he's avoiding Tom Aspinall. Magomed on Kalive tweeted, "Sounds like someone scary of Big Tom." Jon Jones responded by saying, "Magomed, jealousy won't earn you legend status, my friend. Train harder, hate less. Want to truly insult me? Break some of my records first. Let's get started." Magomed then responded with syringe gif, alluding to Jon Jones using steroids. Jon Jones also responded to fans, saying, "It's an honor to be so desired. I'm over here as one of the most successful fighters in MMA history, listening to grade school insults. I'm gonna miss this one day." A fan said, "Honest question, Jon, what would you do if you're in Tom's place? He's an interim champ, and he is hanging because the champ doesn't want to fight him." Jon responded with, "It's wild how narratives seem to appear out of thin air. Stipe and I have been set to fight for ages, even before the interim title bout. Some of y'all just run with stories you wish were real. I know it's hard for a lot of you guys to grasp, but based on his resume today, fighting and beating him would change nothing about my legacy. I would literally be in the same position I am now, the GOAT." Fan said, "But Jon, if he becomes the best heavyweight of all time, then it would look great on your resume that you beat him while he was in his prime." Jon Jones responded with, "If he becomes the best of all time, then calling me a duck would make sense. Right now, way too early. My challenge to him, build a career like mine. Winning 5? Hard enough. 17? I seriously doubt it." An MMA reporter asked Jon Jones a very good question. "Jon, what is difference between Tom and you when you face Shogun? Weren't you also young, hungry, excited guy whose resume lacked big names at that point? What if Shogun behaved just like you and snub you for other bigger name?" Jon fired back with, "Shogun wasn't 16 title defenses deep." What are your thoughts on Jon Jones saying he's not avoiding Tom Aspinall? Let us know down in the comment section below. Up next, Carlos Prates fires back at the MMA community. Immediately after Carlos Prates scored a walk-off knockout at UFC Vegas by putting down Neil Magny, calls that the fight's ending was fishy started to make the rounds. If you're one of those people who thinks Magny may have taken a dive, Prates has a proposition for you. If you saw Saturday's fight, late in round 1, Prates sent Magny to the deck with the left hand. In real time, the fight's end was somewhat of a big shock, as it happened so fast and it didn't really look like Prates had connected. Slow-mo replay, however, appeared to show that the punch hit Magny in the temple. During the post-fight presser, Prates was asked to respond to the conspiracy theories that were already flying around social media.
I think they should come here and let me give a punch on his head, and then after they can talk. You know, when I fought Li Jingliang, was the same, the first knockdown. I hit his head, and then he goes down. You know, so I think Neil Magny was the same. I train a lot of boxing. I train boxing many times, maybe 4 times per week. And you know, my hand, when I punch you, no matter where or how, you're gonna get hurt.
It should also be noted that Magny's record includes a who's who of the welterweight division, and he's either defeated or gone the distance with many noted strikers in the past, so the idea that he would take a dive seems odd. All talk aside, Prates has scored finishes now in all 4 of his UFC fights to date, and he should be a top 15 ranked welterweight by next week. So when asked about who he wants to fight next, the Brazilian called for a scrap with Jack Della Maddalena.
Bro, to be honest, I think the best option would be against Jack Della Maddalena, but you have the rank. So I think he's number 4, and probably next Tuesday I will be 15. So I don't know if he's gonna accept the fight. Now, like I said before on this week, it's time to think with my brain, not with my heart. So let's see, I'm gonna sit with my team, my teammates, and decide what is better, you know, take the right fights on the right time, and do things like that.
Now that's a fight that has a must-see written all over it, but given that JDM is currently ranked number 4, it seems like a bit of a long shot. But do you want to see that fight, and do you see it as a possibility for the near future? If it were to go down, who do you see emerging with their hand raised? Dillon Danis was seen casually sparring with Nina Drama and Alex Pereira in a new video posted to social media. Here's the clip.
No, please.
No, I'm not gonna hit you in the face. Dillon, no, I'm not gonna hit you in the face. No. No, just block it. Dillon. No, I don't want to. I don't like it. You're a glutton for a dude.
Good? He wants it?
Yeah, swing. Go.
Sure?
By all means. By all means, please. Alex is going to do it for all the Ninas. I put it on Alex. For all the Ninas, Alex.
Okay, up next, UFC fighter bashes one championship. It wasn't too long ago when Reinier de Ridder was one of ONE Championship's top fighters and being promoted by the company as such. But following de Ridder's successful UFC debut on Saturday, the Dutch Knight warned any fighter of signing with ONE. If you limit your MMA diet only to the UFC, you may not know that by early 2022, de Ridder held ONE's middleweight and light heavyweight titles. But after losing those belts to Anatoly Malikin, eventually de Ridder fought out his ONE contract. At UFC Vegas 100, the vaunted grappler submitted fellow BJJ black belt Jared Meerschaert in round 3. While talking to the media after his big victory, RDR had this to say about ONE.
It's been a bad couple of years. The stress I've been put through, the stress my family's been put through, to even just get fights, it hasn't been nice. It's hard for me to talk bad because I've had a couple good years at ONE as well. In the beginning, they treated me well, but over the last couple of years, it's been really bad. I feel I have to do for other fighters. If you think of signing with ONE Championship, don't. It's that simple. You should not. There's nothing there. There's no fights. You're just wrong if you do this. If you sign there, this is a bad mistake.
Not surprisingly, de Ridder's comments prompted plenty of feedback from the MMA community via social media. Here was some of it. It's shameful that the sport of MMA is mismanaged so badly across the globe. All the owners ride the backs of fighters to get rich while sharing little with the fighters. At least the UFC is organized in its pilfering. What is wrong with ONE? Why wouldn't they set up fights? Hunter, give him a title shot. If you do MMA, don't sign with ONE. If you do Muay Thai and kickboxing, then that's a different story. Kinda sucks to hear, honestly. You hear the bankruptcy stories. I like their setup though, and it's fun to see BJJ fights on the cards. Seems like ONE was close to getting it, but started making missteps and now isn't looking too good. Shame, as they had a good concept, and the industry needs better, valid competition. All the talk about ONE aside, de Ridder was also asked to call for his next UFC opponent. And the former ONE champion certainly did not pick a can as he proceeded to call out Boers.
Why not Hamzat? That'll be a nice matchup, grappling wise. Yeah, it'd be cool.
That's an ambitious and admirable call out for sure. But given RDR is new to the UFC, the chances of that fight happening next are slim to none. Now let's take a look at Stipe Miocic declines trilogy fight with Francis Ngannou. Depending on how things shake out at UFC 309, we may hear calls for a rubber match between Stipe Miocic and Francis Ngannou. Yes, Ngannou is now with the PFL, but at the end of the day, the heavyweights each hold a win over one another. Even if Miocic does reclaim the UFC's heavyweight title by defeating Jones next weekend, don't expect the legend to call out the Predator. Miocic and Ngannou battled for the first time back in 2018, and Miocic put his wrestling to work and defended the heavyweight title. In their rematch 3 years later, however, Ngannou showcased his world-class power and bombed out Miocic in round 2. While talking to MMA Fighting ahead of UFC 309, Miocic was asked about his previous fights with Ngannou, and the fact the feared slugger has since left the UFC. Yeah, of course I was bummed because I wanted the rubber match, but also at the same point, he's doing better for himself and his family. I'm not mad at him, he's doing great. But the Ohio fighter also reported he understands the rubber match ship has long sailed. Listen, I'm okay with letting go. I get it. As much as I would love to fight him, I wish him nothing but the best. And it is what it is. We're 1-1. That's the way it will be. He got the last one, unfortunately. Even if Ngannou was contractually free to fight under the UFC again, Dana White has repeatedly said that he'll never work with the Predator again. Just recently, in fact, White repeated that assertion. But what do you think? If Miocic does beat Jones, will you lose sleep because we won't see a third fight with Ngannou? Or what about the fact that we'll almost never see a Jones versus Ngannou fight? Nick Diaz's girlfriend Kayla allegedly came out and confirmed that Nick is currently on drugs and he needs to get help before it turns worse. She took to Instagram to send a message to Nick, writing, "Addiction doesn't last forever. You either find sobriety or it takes your life." Is this situation worse than expected? Is Kayla crying out to social media as a desperate last attempt to pull Nick out of abuse? Or is she desperate for attention? Let us know your thoughts in the comments below.